2 Samuel chapter 6. It says, in verse 1, he says, and again, David gathered all the choice men of Israel, 30,000, and David arose and went with all the people who were with him from Baal, Judah, to bring up from there the ark of God, whose name is called by the name the Lord of hosts, who dwells between the cherubim. Look how holy it is. So they set the ark of God, here's how they did it now, on a new cart. They set the ark of God, the ark of the covenant, the most sacred of all, they put it on a new cart. And they brought it out of the house of Abinadab, same name, which was on the hill, and Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, drove the new cart. And they brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill, accompanying the ark of God. And Ahio went before the ark. Then David and all the house of Israel played music. They were rejoicing before the Lord on all kinds of instruments of fir wood, on the harps, on string instruments, on tambourines, and it goes on and on and on. And when they came to Nachon's threshing floor, Uzzah put out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen stumbled. The oxen stumbled, carrying the sacred ark of the covenant of God. The oxen stumbled, so here he puts his hand out to steady the ark. Now, let's look at it from a practical point of view. You say, well, if the ark stumbled, if the oxen stumbles and the cart is at a place of having imbalance, then the most likely thing is to steady the ark. But he said when he touched it, then the anger of the Lord was aroused against Uzzah, and God struck him there for his error. And he died there by the ark of God. And David became angry because of the Lord's outbreak against Uzzah, and he called the name of Perez Uzzah to this day. Now, I want you to see what was going on here. They began to come up with an idea as to how to bring that ark into its place. And as a result of that, now David's frustrated. The people are frustrated. Here's a man that's died that touched the ark. First of all, that wasn't the way God intended for the ark to be carried, not on a new cart. In our day and time, we have to look at what God is saying to us. He's saying that we are devising carts, new carts to carry that which is sacred. We're coming up with ideas, and we're being very ingenious in how we ought to carry that which is most sacred. And usually it is among those that have the most creative minds. Because you understand, we begin to look at how can we ease the responsibility, how can we make it a little more comfortable or more convenient in doing a particular thing. And you know, this thing of modern technology oftentimes the tendency of drawing many people to it because of the fact they say, well, we are not old school any longer. We've modernized this whole thing. When we come to carrying the ark of God, we have to make sure that sacred things are handled the way God intends for them to be handled. So now that this thing has happened, we go back to what was read in this particular scripture. He says, now, what I want you to do, I'm calling for the mature ones now because you have abdicated your responsibilities. He says, so David called them together. David got over his anger. He said, now I'm calling you all together. He said, now what I want you to do is sanctify. First of all, he said, you are the heads of your father's house of the Levites. Sanctify yourselves. He says, you get yourself sanctified. And I would venture to say, God is saying this to the priests now. He's saying this to the go-betweens now. We understand priests. We are the ones, and the ones that have been called by God, to present Jesus Christ to the world. He is saying something to us now. He's talking to leaders. He's talking to those that have been around a while. He is talking to these preachers. He said, preachers, we need to get together. Preachers, you need to get together. Preachers, it's time for you to come together and begin to seek God like you never sought him before. And I'm sensing that that's what God is saying to me. He is saying that to me, and I trust he's saying that to others, because we have allowed those particular things to happen as they're happening today. We have allowed that to happen. You understand? We can't take that responsibility and begin to shift it to others. We have to understand and realize if we're not together, then there's no way for the people to be together. There's no way for God to get through to others what he intended to get through to us. So the world is in a flux right now because of this very thing. Now look at what he says here. He says, now I want the mature ones to sanctify themselves. He says, you and your brethren, let's get together, priests. He said, that you may bring up the ark of the Lord God of Israel. He said, and bring it to the place that I have prepared for it. He said, now let's go back and reference why things are the way they are, why things have happened the way they've happened. He says, because you did not do it the first time. In other words, you didn't get it straight the first time. You left it to others to handle the first time. He said, the Lord our God, not the devil, but the Lord our God broke out against us. He said, and why didn't we do it the first time? Because you did not consult him. You didn't pray. You didn't pray together. You didn't seek him together. You didn't consult him about the proper order. So in last year, for the last 6 months or so, God has this church at a place of seeking him for order. We entered into this new year talking about divine order. Everything that we are about, we said, Lord, I want to know your order so that I'm not out of order. Thus, if I'm out of order, that which I release will produce disorder. So we have to be very careful where we stand. So we talk about the attempts of the past. They, Israel, sought God for blessings, but they didn't seek him for order. You can seek God for blessings, but don't just seek God for blessings, because you won't know what to do with the blessings. You see, we can be blessed, but what are we going to do with it? We will find ourselves misusing and abusing what God will allow us to manage if we don't have order. So the first call of God is to get his people in right order before he gets us to the place of saying, okay, now I'm giving you what you need. I'm providing you all the things that you need in order to carry out my assignments. Have you listened to me as of yet? Have you paid attention to what I have to say to you? And once you align yourself with my will, then I can entrust to you a stewardship to manage what I will place in your hands. And I want you to manage it in such a way that will bring glory to my name. So look what he's saying here. He is saying that we must consult God for that. Now order. Our doing what is good is not enough. We must do what is good well. We must do what is good well in order for us to receive what was spoken of in Matthew chapter 25, verse 21. Look what he said concerning the steward in Matthew 25, 21. He said to him, well done. He did it, but he did it well. Well done. You did what you were to do. First of all, you're carrying the ark but you did it my way. Well done. Done well. And then he says to him, good. Look at the servant now. You are a good servant. Why are you a good servant? Because you did what I told you to do, and you did it well. So you're a good servant. You're good. I can say you're good. Your goodness is not intrinsic. Your goodness is as a result of your obedience. You're good because you did what I told you to do the way I told you to do it. He said, so now you are a good servant. But then he didn't say just good, and the conjunction, faithful servant. You are both, he qualifies this servant to say he is a good servant and he is a faithful servant. Why? Go back to what I said earlier. Because he did what I told him to do well. You are a good and a faithful. So if he did not do it well, he is not a good servant. He's called to service, but he is a bad servant. And he is not a faithful servant, but he is a faithless servant, regardless of his supposedly confession. Because our confession alone does not qualify us to be a good and faithful servant. It has to do with us doing things according to God's proper order. I want you to hear me. And look what he says, good and faithful servant. He says, now let's look at your track record. You have been faithful over a few. When we talk about a few things, I want you to understand what he's saying. You have been faithful over details. You have been faithful over things that otherwise may appear to be trite. You might not have considered these things to be major issues, but you paid attention to my order. See, this is not a matter of getting a person to a place where we are so legalistic and so locked into a system that we don't have any freedom or liberty. But let me tell you something that I've learned over a period of time. When we don't do things rightly or according to the proper order, we find ourselves overworking a situation. We find ourselves becoming more involved or more engaged in activity than would otherwise be necessary. Why? Because you got to go back and do it again. You have to go back and do it again. Or it wasn't, you have to go back and undo all of the things that were done improperly. So we follow what we're talking about now. When we do it well the first time, then you don't have to go back and undo anything. You don't have to go back with regrets. And there's a whole lot of time and effort that is wasted that you end up spending in trying to correct a thing. But you don't have to correct it if it's done right the first time. But think about the number of years we spend in correcting error. Look at the amount of energy that we find ourselves. Look at what's happening governmentally. Look at what's happening in society. There are mistakes that people make, and they spend years and decades trying to correct one mistake. And don't you ever forget, it happens within the church. It could be one bit of error, one thing that's out of order, and we have to spend years and years just to correct that one thing. God has to take us all the way back. He said, well, because you didn't follow my directive, now you're wandering for 40 years in a trip that would have taken just a few days or hardly no time. And what happens, you see what I mean? We waste time when we don't listen. We waste time, we don't listen to God, because we find ourselves having to undo or to repeat a thing over and over and over again.